We've gone super heavy on technology and tools and cyber and dollars and cents, and I think it's time we spend a little time talking about the people and culture. I know we've touched on it a couple of times, but maybe counterintuitively, we see a lot of in our engagement with customers. I've gotten asked the question when people are looking at a system like, when do systems fail? How do they fail? And honestly, it's culture, right? Because generally the technical problems can be worked past. Those are the easy problems, but when you have trust issues between the management and the floor, the way that the leadership and the organization runs, it has a huge impact on whether anything's going to be successful as far as change goes. So before we dive into that, maybe we can just go around and retaining key talent in a job shop, developing talent and culture. Maybe if you guys could just kick it off and share whatever you guys had in mind.
Before when I was speaking about NADCAP, that was as a result of an output of a transformation project, but I didn't tell you why we transformed. We transformed for three reasons: our customers, our brand, and our employees. And so when we focused on the transformation, we made the employees a part of the process of transformation. They were part of the planning, they were part of the Q&A, we asked for their feedback, we just didn't arbitrarily transform the shop. I'll give you a good example. In the old shop, when my lab tech would say, we need to add 2 gallons of sulfuric acid to the tank, they would argue, say, okay, who's gonna do it, right? Because they didn't wanna do it. You get a Home Depot bucket, a little hand pump from a 55-gallon sulfuric barrel, and that's a hazard. It was dangerous, they didn't like doing it. So in the new shop, what do? We implemented a dosing system, fully automated. They don't have to touch any chemicals anymore, and they love it, right? So we made them part of that transformation project, but that was one part, to me, very important about the retention, because we wanted them to feel like they had ownership in it, right? That they were a part of it, part of our growth, part of our change. And because of that, they are very proud to be in our shop. As a result, they say, hey, that was my idea, right? And that was part of the whole process for retention too.
Actually, Andrew, I remember our first meeting that I think it was me and Chet on a call a couple of years ago now, and even just exploring a new software. I think there's about 8 people in there. It must have been half the facility shut down for the day.
Yes.
But you understood it's such a big change, it was going to impact all of them. So they were heavily involved right out of the gates. I actually remember you turning around and asking, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Instead of, I've made this decision, we're doing it, and drive it down. So it's been very apparent from the outside.
Absolutely.
So basically for us, as far as retaining key employees, benefits is a big thing, especially in our industry. A lot of people, even in the manufacturing at all, that's not a big thing on people's minds, where we do 401k, we do profit share, we do health insurance for people. So I think that kind of sets us apart from a lot of other people. And then another big thing I see in manufacturing is, especially on the smaller companies like most of us are, is just not a real positive environment. Our shop, I know before I took over, was the most miserable place. I never wanted to go there. Everybody was angry all the time. People were yelling all the time. And I promised the guys when I took over, I probably have 3 of those guys is all there was back then, I just said, hey, if you guys believe in me and you want to follow me down this path, one thing I'll guarantee you is I'm never going to yell at you. If someone is here that is that bad that I need to yell at you, we're just going to part ways. I'm going to send you on your way. And that's kind of what we've done ever since. If we have, you'll get an errant manager in, and he'll want to, belittle people, or, managers sometimes can be that way, and we just part ways with them. It's like, no, that's, you need to be firm, but you don't need to yell at people or scream at people or tell them they're stupid. And that, I feel, goes a long way. It's just that positive environment,
For us, I would say pay, benefits, bonuses, culture. One of the things we do is cater lunch every day for all of our employees at company cost. It's really appreciated. With 60 employees, everybody's treated like family. We all work together and get along, and you have to have a great attitude or we won't keep you. So it's a fun place to be.
It's interesting you mentioned the lunches, Dana, because I think it's a lot about optimization horizon, right? If you optimize on a short horizon, you make one set of decisions. If you optimize on a longer horizon, you make a different set of economics. I think a lot about the comments we had made, the multiple comments we had made about essentially, this change isn't optional, right? This is part of the bigger picture, and whether it's tracking time here or entering information there, or doing something that impacts your team members downstream, it almost feels like you have to earn that right to be able to say that through building the trust in the team before you're able to kind of ask for that reciprocity, which is adherence, like fanatical adherence to what needs to be done to get the job done right. Versus, I guess, what we hear in some shops that have more poor culture is it's a low trust environment, and when you come down and say that, you hear a fear of the operators. Well, they're not going to do what I ask, or I'm afraid that they're going to essentially revolt. And it seems like it really stems from the very beginning, and it's like that foundation that's being laid from that upfront investment. So maybe getting over a little more specific, Rob, we've been watching, for the last several years, our relationship, Sam specifically has been really stepping up. How proactively do you think about developing your leadership?
Well, I mean, it's pretty much every day, especially now that they kind of handle the day-to-day and I'm trying to move more on to more building the company and stuff like that. I look at every one of those guys and it's like, well, what can I do to make you better? Because the better you are is the better that we can be. And now that has trickled down to where now I don't even have to do that much, because now all my managers, they're looking at it, because it always used to be that thing like I was just talking about, like, oh, that guy's just stupid, we need to get rid of him. It's like, do we really though? Or can we try to bring this guy up and we have a pretty good amount of people that just that happened, where it's like, oh man, I don't think this guy's gonna work out. It's like, well, let's try him over here, let's do that. And then you get him with the right manager, and next thing you know, 3 years later, that guy's a manager. It's like, wow, we're gonna fire that guy. Believe that, So it's one of the probably most important things that took me too long to learn, for sure. I never used to put a lot of weight in it. Now it's the most important thing.
Rob, how many college degrees are held in your company, cumulative?
I don't know if anyone has one other than Sarah, actually. I think Sam was close, but never quite finished, I think. So one bachelor's and one almost.
Yeah, no, and I say that in a very endearing way. One of the things I was thinking about is a lot of the leadership in the metal finishing job shop space tends to come from folks on the floor that showed up and worked their tail off reliably. Looks like it sparked something with Dana here.
It's certainly the case in our operation. Most of our management has worked their way up from the bottom, been promoted. We have hired a few from outside, but we like to bring as many up that have started with us and work them in. We've got a lot of cross-training, a lot of backup for everybody, so that nobody would shut the place down if they were missed for any amount of time, and just all work together.
Yeah, we have definitely focused on training opportunities. We're very flexible with our employees who are college students. So they have classes during the day that they can go and take those classes. And then we tell them if they wish to make up the hours, they can, but they don't have to, they don't want to. So we're very flexible on that. We send employees to training as well in their specific area. So we've sent many of the linesmen to anodizing classes, either through the Aluminum Anodizing Council or through the National Association of Surface Finishing. So we give them those opportunities as well. We pay for their flights, the hotels, because that investment in them pays back many times over. And then they learn something they didn't know before. One of the other things I think it's really important, it's not exactly related to training, but it's related to feedback to the employees. When we bought the business, none of the employees in 27 years had gotten a performance review. None of them. They didn't know what a performance review looked like, right? And so we gave them those reviews, but we also then gave them objectives to focus on, and then we gave them things that we were going to focus on them. How are we going to help them, right? And they were stunned by it. And then also that provided a method for us to rank our employees when it comes to bonuses, right? So we just didn't arbitrarily just say, here's $50. We gave them a review, they got a score, we told them what they would be eligible for, and if they exceeded expectations, they can get more. If they didn't, they would get less, right? It made it fair to everybody. But it instilled this motivation where, hey, I can make 150% of bonus eligibility, because that's our cap, right? Or the bottom is 60%. Less than 60%, you're terminated. We made the rules very clear to everybody, but we provide an annual performance review. We do a semi-annual for certain individuals. We do 90-day probation reviews when they're new employees. So this kind of continuous feedback helps them improve, and they feel like they're part of the process, as opposed to another cog in the wheel.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's counterintuitive when you say, if X, Y, Z is true, you're fired. But then they say, I like that as an employee. Would you say that that's because they feel that you're creating a team of high performers and you're not going to tolerate mediocrity?
Exactly. When we first bought the team, we went through the 4 stages of team development, which is well known for many decades, right? So I feel that we do have a high performing team now, right? But because they have a review process, they know what we expect from them. What you don't want is an employee failing and they didn't know what the expectations were. right? So you're setting them up to fail. So we make sure the employees do know what our expectations are on a regular basis and tell them that if you exceed those expectations, you will be rewarded, right? And so it just created a different dynamic in the shop that we had before. People were just coming to work, doing their job, going home. Right? Coming to work, doing their job, going, that was it. And now we have a very fun environment. We joke around the shop. We play live music. Every employee gets a chance every day to pick their channel of music. Since we have so many varieties, from 23 to 62. So we have a nice variety of music selections going on daily, but that's part of the fun, right? So that was a big change for the culture of the company when we started doing reviews for the employees. And they realized, oh wow, this is what they need from me. And if I do this or do more, I can even do better financially, right? And so that was a big plus.
Andrew, you have a lot of experience in big city. I'm sure there's an instinct to deploy every knob of kind of tried and true corporate America. Have you had to leave any arrows in the quiver?
Yes.
Coming down to a smaller business?
Yes. My biggest team was over 3,000 people across 57 countries. So definitely a different dynamic, running a small shop, running a business, right? So even though I had a P&L and balance sheet because it was such a large business, but this is definitely different for me having my own business, right? The potential for failure at any moment. In the corporate world, all my direct reports were all senior executives. They all had master's degrees. Some of them had PhDs. It's just a little bit different, right? And so all the employees when I took over, none of them had any education of any kind. That's why we started sending you to school and classes and opportunities for education. But definitely one of the things that, because the guys were talking about some of the tangible attributes of retention, which have to do with bonuses, pay, compensation, benefits, et cetera. There's these intangibles that I've always used even in the corporate world, which have to do with independence, purpose, cohesion. Those are the three things. So, and I've applied this as a business owner now. We do a lot of government parts. We do a really specialized optical component for the M1 Abrams tanks for the U.S. Army. And they were getting parts for 25 years, and they had no idea they were for the tank for the U.S. Army, right? And so we've taken our employees regularly to the fabricator where they make the parts, so they can see the parts being made, they can see it assembled and what it's for. Now they have this sense of purpose. I realized that I'm making a part that's really important. My son is active duty Army. I want his parts to work, that they get sent out, that they're anodized by our team, right? So that sense of purpose creates retention, right? That when they go home and say, I'm doing something that's meaningful, right? Then the other part, independence. I try to, and if you guys want to disagree with me from my team, go ahead. But I let the plant run the plant. I let the office run the office. I'm focusing on growing my brand. That's what I'm focusing on, right? So let the plant leadership run the plant, let the office leadership run the office. One of the things that I did when I was in the military is I had a tendency of taking over, right? And so I had to relearn that when I went into the corporate world, but especially now that I own a business, they know what they're doing, so I trust them, right? And that's an important part of retention. And having that sense of independence, they feel like they're part of the process and not just being told what to do every day. And the cohesion part, and he kind of mentioned a little bit about maybe an individual. We had one individual last year. There's a character Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. So think of Eeyore 20 times worse, right? And we just hired the person. It was a military veteran, because I'm very focused on trying to help veterans out. There's just way too many veterans on the streets. Unfortunately, this individual was just bringing the entire team down on a daily basis with just personal issues, nothing to do with work, just complaining every day. I took him for some coaching at the VA as well to try to help him, but nothing was getting through, and to the point where, unfortunately, he didn't survive as an employee because he was affecting the morale of the team, and I had a high-performing team. So sometimes you got to make the tough decisions, right? And just realize what's for the betterment of the entire team, and the individual we let go.
Yeah, very nice. Rob, maybe a question for you, and I think Andrew will have a very verbose answer to this in a year or two as well, as he kind of the growth shows up in numbers. I know a lot of it's infrastructure right now, digital and physical. Yeah. But Rob, in the last couple of years, like just the number of people, number of parts, number of customers, just every number is going up and up. So how do you manage through that? Because right, if you just come in and do the same yesterday as what you did today, and it's just steady state, it's a lot easier, right? So handling the complexity of a job shop while growing a team, while getting leaders to stand up, while everything's growing all at the same time. How's that been, and how much has that growth been a challenge?
Well, it pretty much goes back to last thing I said is that, you have to bring up the people around you. I can't do it all by myself, especially that's what I tell my guys all the time now. I'm like, that ship has sailed. It's too big. I can't do it. So if you guys can't step up to the challenge and help me do this, then we either have to shrink or sell or do something else, because I have to now move on to other things and you guys have to move up and we have to bring up the guys below you. So once you get past a certain point, it almost doesn't really get more difficult, I guess. It's just the same thing on a bigger scale. And I would say maybe the hardest part is just finding those good people, because not everybody can be brought up to that level. Some people don't even want it. So it's picking the right people, hiring the right people, and doing the best you can to bring them up. I mean, that's how we've done it, pretty much.
Excellent, Rob. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your personal vacation over the years. To me, that's almost like a little bit of a barometer, and I'm guilty as could be of this, and maybe I got to test this barometer, see how it breaks. But if you step away for several days in a row, how do things maintain? I was talking to another shop the other month that went on a 3-week vacation to Costa Rica, and everything went normal, like nothing broke, and that was just a massive victory for this shop owner, because years before, like the doctor was saying, hey, stop working so much, right? So it got to that point. Wondering if you've tested that kind of a pressure test yet, or?
I've definitely been able to take a little more time. What always sucks me back in is the opportunities, right? Like, okay, we're going along, we're getting some new work in, and that's fine. And then it seems like every time I get kind of comfortable, like, we're in a pretty good spot here. I got some free time. I can do what I want to do. Then, someone calls me, hey, Rob, I got all this work I need to do. And it's like, all right, I got to get more equipment. I got to get another building now. I got to do all these things. But I enjoy that. That almost to me is the vacation. I love that part of it. Dealing with, Johnny's sick today and whatever's going on over there. If I don't have to deal with that, work is fine. I absolutely love the rest of it. So, but yeah, definitely to answer your question, more time. I think it was last year I ended up taking like almost 3 full vacations. So yeah, never would have jumped to that prior to that. So definitely working out.
Very nice. Dana, how about yourself with vacation and what's happening at D&K today, right? I don't know how many phone calls you've made since you've been here, or what happens if you don't show up for a week?
We've got a great team. We just had off 15 days a few weeks ago. They usually tease us that they set new sales records when we're gone. It runs fine without us. Great team, grown a lot with Steelhead, and higher productivity. Have them do less work and make more money.
Dana, a couple more quick questions for you. I mean, if I recall correctly, they actually didn't have to terminate anyone to get compliance with the system, but there was an expectation that they had to use it. How much was that you driving that, or were you able to get your leadership team to also drive a unity in the team?
I'm certainly the head of driving it, demanding that it will get done, but it trickled down from the management to implement to the people under them. Most of the hourly people do not work directly for me. They work for the management. So.
And then earlier today, you had mentioned, and to the extent you're comfortable and like to discuss it, or you can just pass, but you mentioned employee ownership. How are you thinking about that? And then how are you thinking about who's the key parts of the puzzle that should be bought in for the future of D&K Powder?
We are working on potentially selling to 7 of our management team that I feel have earned it, have built this business and continue to grow it for us. They will have some ownership in the growth and be able to benefit financially. I will probably be the biggest benefit out of that as they continue to grow the business. But it's a chance for us to give back and reward those that have been there for us.
Excellent. Maybe we could open up to the crowd. I know there's businesses at all different stages, later stages, earlier stages.
How important would you guys say an internal certification system is? Because we're thinking about developing that. Like if somebody's forklift certified, or they're certified a quality control specialist, or I feel like that would give some of my employees some objectives to kind of go after and maybe get a sense of purpose. But do you guys do anything like that internally?
So we don't really specifically certify people on paper. We do definitely train people for certain things that I guess it's more verbal that they are or aren't able to do. I kind of like the idea of what you're talking about for sure. I mean, other than like forklift operators, they're certified and a couple things like that. But yeah, I think you're onto something with that for sure. But yeah, like I said, we do it more just verbally, like, hey, you've been trained on this and you can do it now. But yeah, no certs actually.
Part of the NACAP is we have to require to show proof of training that people are trained, right? So in a sense, that's certification for us. So we have forms that are filled out with the name, the date, who certified them, or who trained them, but we have to show that for NADCAP. We do have other programs that are required at a legal level. For instance, we are required annually to do hazardous training, right, to show certification hazardous training, so we have a third party that comes into that. We have RCRA training. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it has to do also with the EPA. So in order to maintain compliance, you have to show that people can know how to handle hazardous materials. So there's an actual certificate for that as well. But also NADCAP requires these kind of training, proof of training, right?
Yeah, that would be like more like external requirements.
Right.
I'm talking about like
Yeah, I mean,
internal, like just like a basic, like, oh, I'm a line operator.
No, we've got, we have training for using the hoist assembly system, training for the passive base system, which is fully automated, training for even the forklift, or training how to do pH checks, as an example. So yeah, we have a whole list, and that's part, and we show that as a matter of fact, NADCAP doesn't tell you what your list should be. We just produced our own list, and the list is extensive, and we do it. Some of them are quarterly, some are semi-annually, some are annually, right? It depends on what it is. And we bring somebody on board. We actually have an onboarding training list. What's the basic they need to know when they start within the first 90 days? At the end of the 90 days, we evaluate how well they did for that. So, and it helps with our quality for sure. One thing I wanted to add, because it's on topic retention, if you're not part of what's called an RMA, your Regional Manufacturing Association, I highly encourage you to join your Regional Manufacturing Association. They're in all 50 states. I'm a member of mine, which is the Bay Area Manufacturing Association. Why is that important for retention? They hold regular events, networking events. For instance, Bay Area twice a year has Manufacturing Night with the Bolts, which is our local hockey team. And so we reward our employees by buying them tickets to go to manufacturing. It's 2 hours at the bar, and then at the game itself. They also do stuff with the Buccaneers and the Rays is the baseball. I'm a big baseball fan, so I'm sorry about that. But it's part of it. They also do many charity events that are for our local youth to help them become the future manufacturers. And again, I reward my employees by participating in those things. We have an annual golf tournament, so we have employees participate in that. There's a cornhole tournament, but it's all organized by the local RMA, and the money that they raise goes to scholarships, right, for our youth. So there's a win-win. The employees get time to socialize, have fun, have a good time, and at the same time, you got the local youth having opportunities for scholarships. So if you're not a member of your RMA, I highly encourage you to find out who is your RMA in your local area and see how much to join, because usually the small shops is pretty cheap. It's for the big players, have 1,000 employees or more, is where they charge the big bucks. But for manufacturers, it's usually a lot cheaper than anybody else, especially if you're a non-manufacturer and want to join, right? And there's usually a ratio. For every 10 manufacturers, only one non-manufacturer. It's all controlled, right? So it's not a bunch of people trying to sell you stuff like Steelhead. So I couldn't help it. I had to throw that in there, Jeff. So it's not suppliers, it's manufacturers. It's manufacturer-driven, but it's a great opportunity for retention to help your employees have a good time outside of the shop as well.
Yeah, maybe retention would be a good one, just to, for maybe all three of you to touch on. And maybe over the last couple of years, I know with COVID and labor and everything like that, and Rob, I know we've had extended conversations about some of the competition for people's time coming from private and public sector. How have retention rates been for kind of the operators, kind of over time as well?
So it seems like the guys that we've had for a while, we don't ever lose those. It's more the guys that, we're constantly growing, so we always need more. So it seems like we never get fully solidified, like, oh, we need 40 people and we'll have 40 for like a year. It's no, we need 40, and then 3 months later we need two more. So it seems like trying to keep that last little bit filled is pretty difficult, especially nowadays. It is so hard to find anybody that just even wants to work at all. And we've offered and offered and offered so much. I mean, you're paying entry-level people so much money and they still just won't come and do it. So that's been hard. You got to go through. We used to have a rule, we figured about 10 to get one good. Now I'd say it's probably 25. Literally, that's how many.
It's gotten worse.
Oh, it's so bad right now. It's horrible. Yeah, especially in our area, it's brutal. But you find the ones, we probably, just the guy just hit a year. One of those ones came in through with a group of other guys and was only okay at first, but kind of bought in, we call it buying into the system. Like everyone comes in, they have this notion that you're there to screw them over in some way and it's us against them. And it takes a little bit for them to kind of get comfortable and be like, well, wait, maybe you're not trying to do that. So he finally kind of bought in and then he's like, okay, well, I want to get more involved. It's like, okay, fine. And then within the last few months now he's a manager making way more money and super happy and wants to be involved. It's like, man, if you would have done that when we first hired you, where would you be?
Yeah.
You know, so that's the hard part right there, is getting over that stigma that it's us against them. Even though we have 35 guys probably that are fully 100% bought in, totally on board with the whole system, but everyone's still skeptical in the beginning.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's wonder how reducible that is. It might just be 90 days or 6 months or whatever, because they're just trained in, right? Because we see it as well. Again, I mentioned at the top of the session about what, when we interact with some shops. I mean, and this is 3 incredible examples of how to run a job shop, by the way, and take care of your people. Really, really impressive. And that's from our perspective. It was working with all of you very deeply. I'd say the opposite end, just to touch on that, is a very low trust environment, us versus them. They weren't born with that, I guess, is what I'm saying, right? Mm-hmm. There does exist a place of employment where it's again, short time horizon. We're gonna put iPads on the floor. Oh, we can't. They're gonna steal them. It's like, what do you mean they're gonna steal them? Like, but then you go look at the bathroom that operators have to use, and it's a folder scan, right? And then the front office is glass and leather, right? It can be pretty obvious on the outside, but it's something that takes a lot of deliberate effort.
I would have to agree, there's issues, especially with younger employees and retention. There just seems to be not a lot of loyalty. If somebody else paying 50 cents or an hour or $1 an hour more, they'll jump ship quick. It's difficult. We've been able to get help, but it's a lot of turnover.
In our case, we measure retention based on the individual themselves decided to leave, right? I don't measure the people that didn't pass the probationary period.
Yeah,
all right.
sure.
An example, we've had the business in September of 2020. 2 have left on their own, and both were because the family was moving to another town, right, for personal reasons. I have hired and fired in the same time since 2020, 16 people, because they did not fit with our company culture, right? They came there because they wanted to collect a paycheck. They were in it for themselves. They didn't understand there was a bigger picture, that if you contribute as part of the whole, we're going to reward you. You're going to be part of the success story. But if you're there for yourself, this is not the frame of mind that we need. And we also focus on their attitude, on their approach to quality, because if they're in there for themselves, they don't really care about the part of the job they're doing, right? And so you see that within 90 days pretty quickly, and usually we take action. I had one person that lasted literally a day and a half, and that was it. And some lasted, up to the 88th day as well, because I'm trying to give them an opportunity to succeed, and we give them feedback on a 30-day cycle as well, those that seem like they're not going to make it. But there are others that have made it. So we went from 4 employees to we have 16 active employees now. We're going to add 8 more in the next 6 months. We're doing our hiring now out of state. I just can't find the talent local.
And you're going to relocate them.
Yeah. So 2 of these folks that are starting here in the next 30 to 60 days, they're coming from Ohio. Huge metal finishing facilities. We're talking about facilities that are 150,000 square feet or more, right? And so, and that's fine with me. I want to bring people with the right attitude, right? And with the right state of mind. And so they're not going to bring any baggage either. So they all went through an interview process. I had them come with their families to visit the shop and make sure it's a fit for them, because the grass is always green on the other side. So you want to make sure you're not making a mistake, right? So we had them come out, visit, and met with my wife and my daughter as well, and they're coming, right? And so they're going to bring a new level of perspective. We were a really small shop. Now we're a medium-sized shop in terms of revenue. I want to get to a big revenue shop, right? And so I want that kind of attitude to be brought. Plant manager Randy here, case in point. He's our plant manager, but he didn't come from metal finishing. He came from the fabric, from our customer side, 20 years, right? Why? Because I wanted somebody that understood our customer's pain point, right? That's why I recruited Randy. So it's all about, if you want a high-performing team and you want retention, it's about attitude, it's about company culture like we've been talking about. It's not all about just money or benefits, right?
Yeah, and it's not pizza parties on Fridays isn't going to be enough, right? It's very deliberate campaign, right? You can tell a lot of thought goes into it. It's very expensive, like time and energy and effort, and having a great culture is something that I would say unlocks the future. but has to be earned and comes at a cost, and is not something that can be done quickly or cheaply. And it requires sacrifice, essentially. So that's really interesting specifics. Anyone else in the crowd?
When I think about retention and some points you guys have brought up, it's about like career progression, development into bigger and better roles. For my shop, we've got 10 employees, myself included. 2 of us are in the office. Okay, so we kind of wear all the administrative hats. On the floor, we've got really 1 supervisor. So it's pretty flat on the floor in terms of employee differentiation. And then there's kind of a void, right, of any staff functions. And so as I'm looking ahead at growing or scaling, and identifying, what's the first key hire in the office? What's the first kind of key position on the floor that I create, whether it's quality or, a more advanced operations manager, et cetera, so that then I can develop guys into those roles. Like maybe y'all could touch on any experience just kind of building out those key functions for the talent to develop into, like how you made the decisions to create those roles, which ones have been the most important?
Well, I know for me anyways, it's just more the way my mind works. I don't always have the best plan, because it seems like even when you have one, life, industry, whatever, it takes a different direction. And I used to hold on to my plan to a fault, to where it was taking me down. So now I usually have some sort of a loose plan, but it's always just assessing all the time, all day, every day. What's going on, and eventually those things should just rise to the top. Just naturally you should be like, oh man, we're having trouble keeping track of whatever it might be, payroll. Well, we're gonna need someone in the office that can handle this payroll. Or we're struggling on our quality, we're shipping out bad parts, we really need a quality manager. To me, it seems like it'd be hard to almost plan that ahead of time. I think because each company is going to grow its own direction, its own, even depending what type of parts you're doing or things like that. So I think you almost have to kind of listen to what the business is telling you and grow in that direction. That's my take on it anyways.
For you, in your experience, what was one of those moments where you're like, I need that and I'm going to do it now?
This will be almost my first one, literally. So Jeff was talking about Sam. He's kind of my right-hand man now. We had hired him. We probably had about 5 guys at the time. I think we have about 58 now. And was like, oh, I need a guy to help me out with this, with basically quality is what I started him out. But by that time, we probably had closer to 20 employees. And I could just see the direction things were headed. And I thought, man, we really, to make this next hurdle, I really need to get some quality, So I thought, he's kind of been the one that's been at the end of our line, packaging, inspecting parts. So he kind of gets the quality end of it. So I basically promoted him up to quality. We didn't really have enough for just a quality manager at the time. So he kind of morphed into basically our production manager from there, and then was doing both for a while. And then we grew enough where he's like, well, I can't do all this anymore. So then I had to bring up another guy to basically be the quality from there. So we stay pretty lean in our office. Probably because it's me and my son and my wife that do a lot of it, so I demand a lot of us, where we would probably have 3 more people in there if it wasn't us. So that's a little different. We only have really 1 other person in there now for how many we have in the back. We probably should have a few more, and probably will. But again, once it jumps out at me and dictates that, hey, this is what we need, then that's what it'll be. But we also work off of a profit share, so everybody that works for me, they don't want anybody there we don't need, because in their mind, that person is taking from the profit because they're getting a weekly paycheck. And if they're there besides that, if we do get profit, then they're taking from that too. So we run kind of lean that way, and a lot of people take on a little extra responsibility just to keep our payroll as lean as it can be, basically.
I have to agree with that. I think you have to find out where your needs are and look at the talents you got. And if you get somebody you can move into that role, if the need gets bigger than what the talent you got to look at hiring from outside.
Yeah, for us, it's risk reward, right? So we're looking, what was our vulnerability? And in our case, when I got the business, our predecessor was doing all the chemical titrations. And even though I could do it, I didn't want to do it, right? And so that was a loose end that had to be addressed right away. So I ended up, just by chance, running into a retiree from Indiana, been doing chemical titrations for 50 years. He was well known especially in the waste industry. And I said, hey, would you like to come over twice a week, 3 hours each time, or 6 hours a week, and help me with the chemical titration? These are early days, right? And then I recruited, and we were short on the office staff. And the office staff, unfortunately, we did not keep when we did the acquisition, primarily because they just did not want to use computers. It was not where I was going, right? And they still wanted to use their ledgers and things like that. And I said, I'm sorry, but that's not where we're heading. And so we ended up hiring a sophomore out of the local college as our office staff member. And then about 2 months later, I realized she was minoring in chemistry. And I say, by the way, if I had Charlie mentor you in chemical titrations, would you be interested? Right? Now, mind you, this is 6 months after we bought the business. This is early 21. And she said, sure. Now she's our QA lab lead, right? And no longer working in the office. And now recruiting 2 interns to report to her from the local college, right? So she's about to graduate from SPC, St. Petersburg College, and she's a QA lab lead. So it all worked out in the end because I identified a risk. It was something I was not passionate about, something I didn't want to do. I wanted to focus on growing my brand. That's what I wanted to do, right? And so it all worked out to where I had a chance meeting at a local conference, recruited this gentleman. He ended up being her mentor, and now she's the lead for our QA laboratory, right? And so if you're going to do that, you need to focus on where your risks are, where your vulnerabilities are, where your single point failures are. And then it turned out she's doing so well. I mean, it's a wonderful retention story, right? If I'd kept her in the office, she may not have stayed with us, right? So now she made product finishing 40 under 40 last year, right? Because that's another thing. You need to recognize your employees, right? So I did all the paperwork, and out of 1,000 applicants, she made 40 under 40 last year, right? And so the pride in that is just amazing, right? So to answer your question, look for your vulnerabilities, look for your risks, look for things that you're not particularly passionate about or somebody else may not be passionate about, and reassign them and have somebody else do. But that's how we started.
One thing I would add is one thing that we've seen as we've been growing is ask the question, who's doing it today? Because you definitely, as you identify the different roles, it can be difficult to pre-construct them ahead of time before they're needed. But if you just say, like, who's doing it today naturally, and then kind of build on top of that, that's something that we've seen work really well. The other one is once you kind of identify who that person is, instead of spending a lot of time defining a big theoretical job description, and just say, like, this metric, this is your metric. Like on-time delivery, something you mentioned, right? So I assume that's maybe something that you own and maybe someone else, but like, no, this is your job. Like this number, and then also what you inspect, people respect. So this is your number, you own it, and we're gonna check it every single week, every single month. You tell me what we have to do to make sure that number gets hit, and you tell the rest of the team what to do. So it creates a way to kind of cut through the noise without having to create complex webs of responsibilities. It's just like, you just own this outcome, and the whole team's here to subordinate to help you, including the ownership. A huge round of applause, gentlemen. Thank you very much, appreciate it.